Good morning, everyone. It is just beautiful. The fall colors and the songsters and the vultures migrating. Oh my gosh, it's just beautiful around here. And I just wanted to show you for a moment the old field. We've been out here a lot, but I'm still seeing a ton of old field persecution. And of course, I'm not expecting to change that single-handedly, but I'm hoping that all of our voices together maybe can. So it seems to be that there's this perception that you need to have either prairie, really nice pristine prairie, or nice forest. And you don't want thickets, you don't want shrubs, you don't want old field. And I just want you to take a look here for a minute at this old field, and it's filled with goldenrods and asters and native blackberries and cedars and rough-leaf dogwood, and there are some trees we planted in here, some oaks, and then other trees, aspen and cottonwood, that came in on their own. And I just want to put a plug in for how beautiful old fields are and how important they are to life as well. So there definitely were prairies in Ohio, but not everywhere. And you can be happy with old field. And I'm saying that because prairies are hard. If you want to manage for a prairie, you better get really good at burning or mowing. And then you got to think about it in terms of harm versus benefit. So you might be really benefiting the plants, but if you get a lot of great plants through intensive management, you're hurting a lot of insects in the process. Now, there are natural processes that happen. Yes, historically prairies burnt, but not every year and not the whole thing. And so I'm seeing a lot of that. Whole prairies burnt at this time of year, as well as whole old fields cut down. And that to me is definitely a definition of insanity. So that is all about humans. And I know some of you are going to get upset with me about this, but we need to look at the other lives that live in these places. So old field is natural. It's part of succession. Yes, there are European grasses out here. You are right, because this was mowed lawn. And without doing anything out here, oh my gosh, there goes a hawk right over my head. How awesome. See, they love old fields too. But without any effort from us, these native plants have come back, and they are strong and they are resilient. And yes, you might call them aggressive with their rhizomes, but they have to be to recolonize these areas that are mowed grass from us humans. So I laud these plants. I applaud them. They're incredible. Like Steve and I look at them and we are so humbled at their resiliency for what they are overcoming in situations like this, and then what they offer the wildlife. So you've of course heard me talk about all of the bees and the butterflies that use these plants that are out here. And yes, even a lot of our native butterflies that lay eggs on grasses will use these European grasses. But also the birds. I mean, there's incredible nesting opportunities in here for song sparrows and other ground nesting birds. And throughout the winter, there will be birds aplenty in here. There always have been. They're eating on these seeds. They're eating the insects that are resting on the stalks. They're eating out of the galls. This is a smorgasbord of food for wildlife. So this is how we need to see this. Now, Steve and I actually managed to keep a little bit of this open. And so he'll do some videos this winter because he's going to have a couple mowing sessions. We mow late winter, so we still have death that occurs because there are insects overwintering out here. But by that point, A lot of the seeds have been eaten, and a lot of the insects have also been eaten. And we will never, ever mow this whole thing in one straight session. We look at it at about a third, which is what I believe Xerces Society recommends for invertebrates. And since we know insects, they're invertebrates, feed so many, it's really important to think about, okay, yes, we need the right plants to feed the insects, and then we need to think about how to preserve the insects so that the, quote, higher life forms can eat off of them. I have friends who think that this is just gorgeous, and so do we. I mean, look at these plumes of goldenrod and all these different colors of the dogwoods and the brambles, and we just keep the shrubs in pods, and we've let them expand a lot because we have observed the really important nature of them for birds. And so just remember this when you're thinking that you need to have a really great prairie or a really great forest. So with the prairie, you're going to have significant management hurdles. What were prior prairie soils, you're probably going to have an easier time of it, but then still you need to look at hydrology. So that means, how has the drainage changed in the area where you live? Because where we are, the hydrology has changed a ton. Almost all these fields around us, which were not prairie, but they're tiled. So that's something that you have to think about if you want to have an easier time of management. And forest just takes a while. You can see we've got some oaks out here, and they're doing their thing, but they're slower growing. Now some of them, like this one right here, are bigger, and they're getting there. And we have, of course, cottonwoods and aspen. There are faster and slower growing trees, which I've talked about before. So think about, if you're wanting to do forest or help restore the forest, letting the old field vegetation guide the way. Let the old field cover the soil, feed all the life, house the birds and the mammals and all of that until the trees are big enough to start dropping their leaves and smothering the vegetation on their own. If you try to have a forest in this right now, obviously you're going to be doing a lot of work. So I'm talking about this in terms of what can help nature most and also what can help you most, because I think that sometimes we're really great at promoting activities that take huge amounts of time from us that are wanting to do this restoration work, and then they don't ultimately succeed, which is really, really disappointing. So if you have an old field, and if you promote an old field and you let that old field stand through winter, and if you do take some of it down, you do it late and you don't take all of it down, then no, Steve and I are here. We are doing jumping jacks, we are clapping our hands, we are hooting and hollering for you in thanks, and almighty thanks, because this is really, really important habitat. And don't just take my word for it, dig into it, read multiple sources. If you go to, say, prairiejournal.com, you might read something different. Dig further, dig into wildlife magazines, wildlife books, plant books, specific goldenrod books, aster books, and most importantly, probably more important than anything, go sit in an old field. See the life that is there. I guarantee you there's going to be life. And if you haven't really paid attention before, you're probably going to be super wowed, because daily we are wowed. Okay, so this is in support of old field vegetation and in support of all of you that are doing the restoration work. We love you and are so, so grateful for you. Okay, so an addendum. If you planted a prairie because you wanted to help the pollinators and the birds, and you ended up with this old field vegetation, still pat yourself on the back. Job well done. This is incredible habitat. If that land where you live was not prairie, it's going to be hard to keep as prairie. And so recognize that the land is telling you what the land can grow well and what you can grow well without having to be too involved. So prairies have a history with burning and with large herbivores, and some of those obviously aren't around anymore. So we just have to reshape our mind about some of these things that we think we need where we are. And I know it's all coming from a huge, big heart to want to help. But know that if this is what yours looks like, you are helping tremendously. Tremendously. So job well done. We are so grateful.